The second kinship system is called the Hawaiian system. That's another really easy one. There's no cousin in the Hawaiian system. All cousins are considered and called siblings. By extension, your cousin's parents, your aunts and uncles, become your parents. So you have no cousin, no aunts and uncles, but you can have many moms, many dads, and many siblings. The Iroquois system is a little bit trickier. It is a system where your parallel cousins become your siblings, and your cross cousins are your cousins. By extension, the parents of your parallel cousins become your parents, but the parents of your cross cousins are your aunts and uncles. The Sudanese system is very easy. It's just like our system, the Eskimo system, with one exception. They do make an important distinction between cross cousins and parallel cousins. Now we're going to talk about descent. Descent means the way we trace our bloodlines. What is important in a society when you define who your identity is according to your ancestors. It's not so important in the Western world, but it is very, very important in other places of the world where within a family there are clear hierarchy rules and inheritance rules. The first type of descent is called patrilineal descent. It is by far the most common type of descent in the world. It was our type of descent in the Western world here in North America until recently, because now we don't care so much about our bloodlines. In a patrilineal descent, you trace your kinship through the male bloodline. Patri means father and lineal means line. So, your last name, your identity, your rights, your titles, the land, farms, animals, inheritance, all these things are transmitted from father to son, directly from man to man within the male bloodline. Patrilineal systems are almost often patrilocal. I will explain what patrilocal is in the next slides. One example of patrilineal descent is us, until very recently, and we still live with the consequence of that type of descent. Most of us have our father's last name. I chose one very striking example, the most different from us I could find in the world. It's in the Nuer populations of Sudan. Now, the Nuer population is a big group of Sudan. Most of them are Christian. They live in cities. They have an education. They live just like us. They're urbanized. They're educated. Some of them still live in a very traditional context. But some families still follow that type of very, very strict patrilineal system. What they do, it's very important for them to have a male descendant for spiritual reasons. If a man does not have a son, this man just don't go to heaven when he dies. He becomes an angry ghost. So men are very, very anxious about having a son. But sometimes in life you don't have a son, you just have daughters. And then your wife is too old to have more children and you're afraid to die as an angry ghost. So men in that situation will not usually find another wife. They will stay with their wives. They're monogamous. But their younger daughter will change her gender. She will become a man. And she will marry another woman. Now, girls are not unhappy about that system. Because when they become men, they just become men in theory, not in their daily lives. So they gain a lot of liberty. So they marry another woman. And the goal of that union is to give a son to their father. And the son will belong to the father. So these girls won't have children themselves. Their wife is going to have a child. So their wife is going to sleep with other men, one of them, to have a male child. And as the youngest daughter who becomes a man, well, you have a lot of liberty. You can have boyfriends, they use contraception, they live in the modern world, most of them. So it's it's easy. So when that female couple has finally a son, the son belongs to dad, and then the marriage can be broken and girls will continue their lives. And the man will raise that son and die happy and go to heaven. Patrilineal systems are generally patrilocal. This means that when there's a marriage, the girl will leave her family and go live with her in-laws. We don't realize that here because we live in a very wealthy society, in which when you are with someone, married or not, you just find your own place to have your privacy and do your life. But this opportunity is not given to a lot of people in the world. In a lot of countries, when you get married, you live with your parents. So one of the partners has to leave. Most patrilineal systems are patrilocal. It means that the girl will marry out. She will live with her husband's family. It means that in some countries, people don't want to have daughters because they're going to lose them in the future. This is why sons are so valued, especially in China and India. In China, it came from the one-child policy that started in the 1970s and ended a few years ago, where when you can have only one child, you really, really want that child to be a boy, because later in his life, he will bring his wife to live with you, and she will take care of you. If you have a daughter and only one child, she's going to leave, and you're going to be alone in your old age. In India, people really want sons for other reasons, which I will explain later. So patrilocal residence means women marry out and go live with their husband's parents. Matrilineal descent is the opposite. It does not mean that it's the mirror opposite, but let's say it's the opposite. So in a matrilineal descent, kinship is traced through the female bloodline. So the same things: last name, identity, title, rights, bloodline, inheritance, land. This is all transmitted within the female bloodline, but not necessarily directly from mother to daughter. It could be, but most of the time it is not. It's transmitted from man to man, but within the female bloodline. So from the mother's brother to the daughter's brother, instead of being directly from the mother to the daughters. You'll have a drawing of that in the next slide. And matrilineal systems are not necessarily matrilocal. Matrilineal descent is not common in the world, and matrilocal systems are rare in the world. Most matrilineal systems, when people do not get their own place when they get married, they are natolocal. This means husbands and wives do not live together. They get married, but each one of them stays with his or her own parents. Natolocal, nato means being born in Latin, and local means place. So you remain at the place where you were born. husbands and wives do not live together. It works well in small villages when you marry within the village, so you can visit each other very often, or in very densely urbanized areas where you marry someone from the same neighborhood and you can visit each other. We call it the visiting husband culture. One example of that is Ashanti people in Ghana. Ashanti is a major ethnic group in Ghana. They live just like us. They are very urbanized and westernized, but some families still follow that tradition of nato local residence. They are matrilineal. So they marry someone living nearby, same neighborhood, and each of them live with mom. Some families decide not to do it. Not all Ashanti people do that. Only the most traditional families will still do it. Some matrilineal societies are still matrilocal. This is not common, but it still exists. Matrilocal is the opposite of patrilocal. It means that men marry out. Men join their wife's extended family in their wife's house with her parents when they get married. You can imagine that men don't like that so much in many places in the world. So there are some variations. It's not the mirror opposite of patrilocal residence. There are some glitches. I will explain these. Sometimes when men have a strong authority on women in a system, and this system is still matrilineal and matrilocal, one man of the family is the exception. This man will stay with his family when getting married to put order around and have a look on women around, to keep the authority in the family. One good example of matrilocal residence that is still in place today is Bemba people in Zambia. It's a small ethnic group in Zambia. You see a land of a family on the picture. The square house is their house. The round house there is the kitchen. It's not the house of the family that you see there. And in this system, men marry out. They leave, and they join their wife's family when they get married. But there's a special system there. They go through a series of rites of passage to be accepted in the family. And when this is done, they have a choice. Either they leave and they go back to their family, bringing their wife with them, or they can stay at their wife's family if they want. If they decide to do that, they have the possibility to marry their wives' sisters as well. So there is a possibility of polygamy if they accept the system. According to some studies, a little bit more than half of the men, nearly 60%, go back to their family, and about 40% stay with their wife's family. Not all systems are matrilineal or patrilineal. A lot of systems in the world, especially in the developed, wealthy Western world, are what we call bilateral. It means that both sides, both bloodlines, are equally important in how you define your identity. You can be closer to your mom's bloodline or dad's bloodline. It's your choice. It's a question of personal choice. In such systems, the residence pattern is not matrilocal or patrilocal. It is what we call neolocal. Neo means new, local means place. It means you find your own place. Couples find their own place. They move away when they get married or when they get together. This is our system here. Okay, the next topic is marriage. It's really hard to find a definition of marriage that would fit all societies of the world because it varies a lot. And for anthropology, what we do call marriage is any situation where people live together or not, but are together and have a official socially accepted sexual access. So what we have here in Quebec, in Canada, partners living together but not being officially married is called marriage in anthropology. So a marriage is a tie, it's a formal tie that links partners. It can be two, it can be one. It can be two, it can be many, not one. The number is not important. The gender is not important, sex is not important. Okay, it's partners with official sexual access. Very often there's a link with religion, because the early function of marriage was to put order in society, where people have to put rules around sexual access. So marriage is there for that, was there for that. It's linked with reproduction. It's linked with bigger families as well, because when you marry someone, when you are with someone, you're with the family as well. There's many ways to classify marriage in the world. The first way to classify different types of marriage is by the degree of liberty partners have in choosing each other. So it's a little bit like a spectrum. At one end of the spectrum, there is what we call autonomous marriage. This is what we call here love marriage, or what we do here in North America, in the Western world. Partners select each other with no help or pressure or obligation from their extended family or their immediate family. At the opposite end of the spectrum, there is what we call forced marriage. This is when parents choose partners. It is imposed on partners, especially on women. So partners are not consulted. They do not have any power of decision. They have to obey. This is considered a violation of human rights. And we consider child marriage to be forced marriage as well. In the middle, there is a very broad category we call arranged marriage. This is where parents do an intervention in selecting the partners, parents or family. So it can be very, very close to a autonomous marriage, where partners still select each other, but parents will influence, or they will try to give some ideas, or they will try to help selecting partners. Also, it can be very, very close to forced marriage, where parents will select partners, and partners will have a possibility to say yes or no, but there will be a lot of pressure. It's almost forced on them. This is really close to forced marriage. So the frontier between arranged marriage, autonomous marriage, and forced marriage is not so easy to determine. In the middle, there will be partners working with their parents together, helping each other, asking each other's opinion, respecting each other in the choice of partners. The next slide, you have two hyperlinks, Arranged Marriage Part 1 and 2. You can watch these videos. They're about Pakistani Americans, young people your age, giving their views on arranged marriage. There is no exercise, no obligation, but it's really instructive. You can watch these videos if you want. They're short. There are other kinds of rules around marriage. They're called rules of endogamy or rules of exogamy. And these rules exist at different degrees in all societies. Rarely you see rules of endogamy. Most often you see rules of exogamy. But rules of endogamy, to start with, endo means in. You remember that. So rules of endogamy focus on who you can actually marry. They give you a very limited pool of candidates in which you can select your partners or in which your parents will select your partner for you. Examples of rules of endogamy. You will marry your cross cousin, either patrilineal or matrilineal. More rarely, this is seen in only minority groups in the Middle East. You will marry a parallel cousin, but it is extremely rare. These are rules of endogamy. They focus, of course, they tell you who you cannot marry, but they will focus on the small group of candidates in which you will have to choose your partner. Of course, this is in theory, because imagine you live in a world where there are strict rules of endogamy, but you do not have any patrilateral cross cousin your age to marry. You will end up getting married anyways. Your parents will help you choosing someone, and a cousin or someone in your extended family or group. If there's no, this is in theory. In practice, even if there's no candidate in the pool of candidates, people will go around the rule and get married anyways. Rules of exogamy are much more common. These rules will focus on who you cannot marry. They will focus on the prohibition. Example, you cannot marry someone from another caste, you cannot marry someone from another religion, etc. Exo means out, so they focus on other people you cannot marry. Rules of exogamy can be very strict or not. Example here, we do have rules of exogamy that vary from one family to another. In some families that are more strict, your parents might not be very happy if you date someone that has another religion, that comes from another racial group, or that comes from another very different socioeconomic class. It depends. I remember when I was younger, there were rules of exogamy in my family. They were not written, but I knew they were there. In some societies, rules of exogamy will be much more strict, and it's the case of caste systems. These are pretty strict, and it depends on the country as well. A caste, I didn't put the definition on the slide, but a caste is a group of people within a society that share common characteristics. These characteristics can be family name, profession, or socioeconomic status. Sometimes these three go together, but there is a set of characteristics that are put in place to assign you to a group. Castes are hereditary. It means that your children will be in the same caste as you are, and you belong to the same caste as your parents, because you cannot marry someone from another caste. So of course, the caste will remain the same in the family. The best example of a caste system is India. Let's see the example of India. On the right, you see a diagram of the caste system. You do not have to learn that. It's not important for any test or exam. But you see 5 different castes. I'm sure you've heard about these. The Dalit, for example, the lower caste, the word untouchable. I'm sure you've heard of that. It's the lower socioeconomic caste. Traditionally, it is prohibited to marry someone from another caste. And the caste system was hereditary. It still is. It is linked with religion because in the Hindu system, the caste system is important. And the only way to change your caste is to die and to be born again in another caste. The Hindu system is linked with reincarnation. You know that. So right now in India, the caste system is still there, it exists, but it is prohibited, and it has been prohibited for decades to discriminate on the basis of a caste. So you do not have the right anymore to discriminate in hiring, in your admission in schools to be discriminated because of the caste system. In 1997, the first Dalit president was elected. So he was from the lower caste and he became president. So discrimination is prohibited. It is still done a little bit, but it's not correct. Some traditional families will still care about the caste system when you date someone and marry someone, though. So this is still done in some families. Another cool example is Senegal in West Africa. There is a traditional caste system that was in place for centuries. People don't use the word caste anymore. It's not in the vocabulary of people. But the traditional system is known by people. There are 3 castes with a hierarchy. In the upper caste, you will see people like academics, or soldiers, and interestingly, farmers, because they are very important in society. They feed people. In the middle caste, you will see manual workers, traditional professions like tailors and potters and metal workers and blacksmith, etc. And in the lower caste, you will have people without access to property or to house or to land. The caste system is not in place anymore for professions because Senegal is developing. There's a very good education system, so people can do whatever they want as a profession. But traditionally, your caste was determined by your family name because traditional professions were transmitted from father to son. As a boy, you were having the same profession as your dad. Not anymore. So you can be a flight attendant, a computer engineer, or professional basketball players, as we see. Many of them in the NBA come from Senegal. And the caste system is not there anymore for professions. But in traditional families, people still know to which group they belong because it's still linked with family names. And in traditional families, when you date someone from another caste, it's okay. People choose their partners. Marriages are not arranged anymore so much. But Pam will sometimes say, maybe, you should choose someone from closer to us. So you still hear things like that in most traditional families. But the caste system is not in use anymore for education, for labor force, and for many aspects of life. Another thing that often happens at a marriage is a transfer of goods or money. It's done in many societies. The first type of transfer is called bride wealth. Bride wealth means you transfer goods or money from the groom's family to the bride's family. So at a marriage, the bride's family receives money or things, or the bride herself receives money or goods, or the new couple. It depends. It can be the bride's family, only the bride, or the couple. This happens in family where women are considered valuable members of society. They still have a lower status than men. This is the case in all societies, but they're considered valuable members in their family. And let's be clear here. Men do not buy their wives. This is how we tend to see that sometimes in our society here, because there is a bride going in a family and there's money going the other way, or camels or whatever. People do not buy wives. It is not how they perceive the transaction. If they perceive and phrase it like that, it's because of Western influence. So how do people perceive bride wealth? They see it as a form of compensation. And bride wealth, very important to remember. I didn't say that before, but remember that. Bride wealth happens in local societies where women leave their families and join their husbands' families at marriage. So this compensation is there to compensate the family, to say the family of the bride, you took a lot of time, energy, resources to raise a good daughter that will be a good wife, and then you lose her. She leaves you. So here's a compensation. Or to compensate the bride's family for the loss of a daughter and the loss of her future children that might be helping you in the future. So you compensate the bride's family. Because you reimburse them a little bit for the resources they put into the daughter, and to compensate for the loss, because you're going to lose your daughter when she gets married. There are many kinds of goods that can be given as bride wealth. The most common is cattle, gold jewelry for the mother-in-law, or nice dresses or nice clothes for the mother-in-law, or cash. This is very often done in cash right now. As you see in the picture, it's from a traditional Chinese wedding, and you see cash on the table. They won't do e-transfer. They will nicely display cash on a table at the wedding, just to show off a little bit. This is traditional as well. The other kind of transfer is the opposite. It's called dowry. For my French speaker, la dot, D-O-T. The dowry is a transfer of goods or money from the bride's family to the groom's family. It's the opposite. It's the other way. And of course, families do not buy husbands. They don't even see it like that, or we don't even see it like that. It's to compensate the groom's family that supports an additional woman. Important. Just as in the case of bride wealth, dowry happens in patrilocal societies, where women leave their home and join their husband's family. It happens as well in societies where women have a lower status. They're seen as not so important as men in families. They have a lower status. They have a low status. So they view it as a compensation to the groom's family. It's, oh my God, we're going to have to support another woman. She's going to cost us a lot of money because she's going to we're going to need to feed her, to give her clothing, healthcare. Her kids will need to go to school. So it's seen as a burden. So women have a lower status in societies that practice dowry still today. Another function of dowry is to help the integration of the bride in her new home, because very often girls will get married very young, they will join their husband's family, and they know no one in that house. And it's pretty hard for them to be integrated because they have a low status as well. So coming in the new home with gifts and valuable things is a good way to be accepted in the new house. And the amount you pay is a sign of prestige for the family. For the family of the girl, the higher is the dowry, the more prestigious is the family of the girl. And the higher the dowry you're asking is a sign of prestige as well for the groom's family. We had that system here in Quebec until the generation of your great-grandparents. It was the case. We had dowry, but the dowry was given to the couple, not to the family of the groom. When my great-grandparents got married, I found the contract in family archives, and the couple received one iron bed and one cow. This was the dowry given by the bride's family to the new couple. So as you can see, I'm not coming from a very wealthy family. The most striking example of dowry in the world right now is India. India is changing. India is becoming wealthier. There's a growing middle class there, and the country is developing. People get education. And these new changes in the country do not go well with a traditional dowry system. In the traditional dowry system in India that existed for centuries, it was pretty well integrated. It was working well. At a marriage, the family of the bride was giving to the family of the groom things like rugs, carpets, bedding, blankets, cooking pots, things like that. Things that are useful in the house and that were helping the integration of the bride. But now, with this new wealth around, grooms' families are much hungrier in what they ask. They will ask for things like flat screen TVs, portable ACs, washing machines, iPads. In richer families, they will even ask for motorcycles or cars. And the problem is growing right now in India. This girl you see in the picture here, it's from a few years ago. She was in the news because a fight started to happen at her marriage because the dowry she was giving was not considered high enough. She had to call 911 or the equivalent in India. So it's pretty bad what's happening now. To the point that families do not want girls anymore. They want boys because they know that if they will have a girl, the dowry later in life will be really high to pay. So women are pressured to have an abortion if they're expecting a girl. And right now, ultrasounds are prohibited in India for that reason. Sex determination is prohibited in ultrasounds. In small villages, you will see things like infanticides. People will kill baby girls in order to try to have a boy after. And so there's just like in China, there's an imbalance in the sex ratio that's coming up in India. There's much more men than women. And women are getting organized to change that system right now. So they're protesting, they're advertising. The government is trying to change that situation. So in the next years, it's going to be pretty interesting what will happen in India to change that dowry system that harms women a lot. The last way to classify marriages is a very important way. It's by the number of partners that you can marry. There is first what we call monogamy. Monogamous systems are covering a large part of the planet. Most countries are monogamous. It means you marry only one partner. So a marriage includes two partners. Mono means one, gamy means marriage. You marry one person. This is what we do here. Polygamy means marrying more than one partner. Poly means many, gamy means marriage. So in a polygamous system, it is legal to marry more than one person. It doesn't mean everyone will marry more than one person, but it is a possibility. In most countries where it is allowed, people will still be marrying only one person for the reason of wealth and resources. Polygamy, in the word polygamy, there is no notion of gender. But there are two kinds of polygamy. And you have to know these two kinds of polygamy. The first one is polygyny. It is when one man has the possibility to marry more than one wife. And polyandry, it is when one woman has the possibility to marry more than one husband. As you can guess, polygyny is much more widespread than polyandry in the world. So polygyny is a system in which men have the possibility to have many wives. This is possible in a system with a hierarchy, with a socioeconomic hierarchy, where wealthier men will have that possibility. As you can imagine, there is competition between co-wives, but surprisingly, for us, wives do not generally compete for the husband's attention. They will compete for resources for their children. Each wife wants their own children to have access to health and schooling, etc. There is also cooperation between co-wives. It's not always fighting, it's helping each other, and it's a friendship as well. I had a teacher in the States coming from a country where polygyny is practiced, is widespread, and he was spending 9, 10 months of the year in the States and 2, 3 months back home every year. And his wife, he had one wife at the time, his wife was actually asking him, would you please marry another one? So I have company and I have help in the house. So women are not against the idea where they grow up, where it's possible. The number of wives is not unlimited. It's never unlimited. It's always limited, sometimes by law, sometimes by religion. For example, Islam allows for 4 wives as long as each one is considered equal. But in the vast majority of Muslim countries, men have one wife. If there is more than one, it's rare because of the second factor that limits the number of wives, it's resources. Each wife needs to have proper housing and resources for their kids. So you need to be pretty wealthy as a man to have many wives, actually. So even if it's allowed, it's not done at a large scale today. Also, even if some men can have more wives, everyone have the possibility to have a marriage in polygynist countries or societies. Even if there's an equal number of men and women in the society. Because women typically marry at a younger age than men in these countries. So in the pool of candidates for marriage, there are more women than men. So there is a balance being done here. An example of polygyny I chose is Gambia. It's a country where polygyny is allowed, but not widely practiced. On the left side, you see a typical land in the countryside, and on the right, typical house in the city. So it works well. Polygyny works well when other elements of the social system around allow that. As you have seen at the beginning of the semester, cultures are integrated. All elements fit well together. So in the countryside, where people are farming, women do not have access to school so much. You're less educated. And they never have really access to financial independence. And this is important. Polygyny is accepted in a society where women depend on men for survival. So in a land like that, each wife will have a separate house where she will stay with her kids. So it works well. Everyone has privacy, everyone does her own business, but they all live in the same family, in the same land. On the right, in this urban house, some men have the possibility to marry many wives because they can afford it, but it gets more complicated because people are wealthier, women have more education, they have access to the workforce, maybe to financial independence, so polygyny is less accepted. It's less practiced as well. But if it ever happens, it's really expensive for a man to have many houses, so that you don't see that. But a house typically where there is a polygynist family, the house is bigger. Each wife has her own room when she will sleep with her own children. And when children get older, they have their own room. So you need to be pretty wealthy to practice polygyny in urban areas like that. Now, the question I have very often in class is, how do women organize to decide who sleeps with the husband? Well, typically they will take turns, and it doesn't create fights. It's well integrated into the system. And in the countrysides, I've seen families where the woman who will sleep with the husband that day is cooking for the rest of the family. Polyandry is a system in which a woman has the possibility to marry many men. This system is really rare in the world. Today, it is seen in only one place in the world, in Tibet. This is a small province of China. What they practice is called fraternal polyandry. It means that a woman marries brothers, not her brothers, but she marries brothers from the same family. A system in which a woman would marry many men from different families would be called associated polyandry, and this is not seen in the world today. The main reason why women do that, some women would do that in Tibet, is for financial reasons. It's to prevent the division of the family land, not her family's land, but the family land of the brothers. And even if polyandry is practiced in Tibet, it does not mean that women have a higher status than men. Men are still in authority in this system. These images show how people live in small communities where polyandry is practiced in Tibet. These people are pastoralists. I don't know if you remember what pastoralism means. We have seen that at the beginning of the semester. It means that their subsistence is based on herding animals. They have yaks. They have big herds of yaks, and they need a pretty big land for that because they live in the Himalaya mountains, and it's a very harsh and cold territory. So for the yaks to survive and for the humans to survive, the family land has to be huge. So they assume that if all brothers of the same family owning the land marries each one a wife, it wouldn't work. They would have too many children to feed, and also they would have to divide their land. So they choose to pool their resources to marry only one woman and to allow the land to remain intact. They are transhumant. It means they travel a lot with their animals. They have a fixed home in a village, but they have camps in the land where they will sleep many nights in a row. So there's no fight in the house for sexual access to the wife because most often there is only one brother home. And if there are many brothers home at the same time, the older brother, called the first husband, has authority and has more sexual access to the wife. When there's a baby, they know who the father is. It was the man present at home when the baby was conceived. Even if they know who the father is, all men will have authority on all children. Sometimes in bigger families, there's a big age gap between the older brother and the younger brother, which means that very often the wife will be pretty much older than younger brothers. So as you can imagine, younger brothers do not like it a lot. So they do not have to marry to participate into the marriage. Only brothers who wish participate into the marriage. Younger brothers have two possibilities. The first possibility, they participate into the marriage, they get married with the wife, so they can have access to the land and resources and income from the yaks, but they just don't sleep with that wife. They will bring girlfriends home, and it's okay. It's accepted by the community, by the wife. Anyway, she has more husbands. She doesn't care about that. The younger brother can also decide he does not get married. He does not participate into the polyandrous marriage. So in this situation, he has to leave home. He will go to the city, find a paid job. Maybe the younger brother is more educated, so he will do his own life and marry his own wife. And it works. The whole system works because all elements are integrated. Laws, politics, and kinship system.